I am very glad to be able to take part in this conference and tell you about the problems of human resources in agriculture in a broader sense of the word. I should talk about the use of human resources in the global context. Then I should talk about human resources in European agriculture and some positive or negative trends relating to human resources, mainly in relation to productivity, as well as the existing differences between individual member states. When we talk about the utilization of human resources in European agriculture or agriculture worldwide, we should contemplate these problems in a broader context, the context of dynamic growth of population worldwide, as we have been witnessing since the onset of the Industrial Revolution until the day. We have witnessed the massive growth of worldwide population during the last, say, 130 years, from 1.5 billion individuals to today 7.8 billion people. Of this, about 1/3, that is something like 3 billion people, live in rural areas, have strong relations to the rural areas, and more than 1 billion of these people worldwide directly work in agriculture. There are some formidable differences between individual regions of the world in terms of the development of the rural population. Let's see it in this context of development between 1990 and 2015. Note the development of economically active population. The numbers of people economically active in agriculture on the global scale have grown by approximately 200 million. Nevertheless, this mainly applies to the developing countries. If we take the advanced countries, such as the member states of the European Union, the farming populations tend to dwindle continuously. The number of people economically active in agriculture has dropped by about 10 million to something like 9.3 million in 2015, and this seems to be quite a stable, regular trend. North America shows quite an interesting trend where less than 3 million individuals are involved in agriculture of a total population of the US and Canada of nearly 400 million. As for the distribution of economically active population this also translates into the distribution of farms. Most farms are located in the developing countries. While in the advanced countries, there are only about 4% individual farms of the world. Here we can see how farms are diversified in terms of size. There are about 500 million farms worldwide, of which about 70% are smaller than 1 hectare. 10% are of about 5 hectares, and farms above 10 hectares only make about 3% of the total population of farms, so to speak, the total number of farms. So if we should talk about this problem of size and equipment, it is not just a Czech problem. It's one that we can see in a large number of countries, and it is a phenomenon that affects agriculture across all the continents, in fact. And if we take a look at the dwindling population involved in agriculture, this is a general trend that we can see throughout the world, not just in the Czech Republic, not just in the European Union. You can see in the last 30 years, we have witnessed a radical reduction of the population directly involved in agriculture. And in the European Union, this trend has been much the same. And if we relate this to the Czech Republic, in relation to the EU trend, we can see a very similar trend. It correlates very well with the global average or the European average.
It means that in the Czech Republic, from the viewpoint of trends, nothing unusual is happening. It's everything you can see across the global economy. But what is interesting is to look at differences which exist from this angle at the level of individual member states. EU works within the common market and CAP, but a CAP in its concept is trying to find a compromise concerning finding a solution for very difficult problems. We have 28 states in the EU, and they are very much different. There are differences in terms of the role, position of agriculture within the national economy. And of course, in each state, it's different from the viewpoint of employment ratio. In each country, there are differences. primarily due to reduction of the agrarian sector and substitution of labor by capital. It means by massive subsidies into agriculture. And that's obvious in member states of the EU. In the past 20-30 years, they've transformed their agriculture, and farm entities prevail, with the average size 20-25 hectares per farm. And in countries with smaller farms, the proportion of people employed in agriculture is much higher, between 5 to 20%. What's again specific from the viewpoint of distribution of human resources is also a gender issue. Of course, that the proportion of males is double to that of females working in agricultural sector. From the viewpoint of this gender issue, there are not big differences between individual member countries. Speaking about the Czech Republic, we can see that the development from the viewpoint of economically active men and women in agriculture more or less corresponds with the development at the level of the EU, both male and female population. Of course, what's also specific in the Union agriculture as such, vis-à-vis to global agriculture, is a specific dual character. What you can see is that European agriculture, from the viewpoint of involving economically active population into agriculture, the gist of population is localized in smaller farms. It means farms roughly up to 20 hectares. Contrary to that, farms above 20 or respectively 100 hectares, there is a substantial reduction of employees in agricultural sector, and especially in farms above 100 hectares, employees are substituted by outsourcing, which is an important phenomenon. In terms of age structure, of course the situation is very specific. From the viewpoint of the age of managers or owners of farms, higher age category prevails. But it is necessary to realize one fact. Worldwide population is aging, and the European population is aging very dynamically. If we look at the age median of states of the EU, the average age is over 40 years. In the Czech Republic, the median ranges around 42 years of age. It means if we are discussing the fact that farmers are getting old and the proportion of younger farmers is diminishing, it's in a way a natural trend, and it's difficult to work with it because it's, as I said, natural. If you look at the EU economy, and if you look at the average age of working population, you'll find out that there was a shift by 10 years, and it's to be expected that it will grow. And that is important to realize. Of course, from the viewpoint of distribution across farms, you can see that related to their size. The smaller the farm, the higher the age of the manager. And contrary to that, with large farms which are managed by professional management, paradoxically, the average age is diminishing. A specific feature of the EU agriculture is increasing participation of women in role of farm managers. In the past 10 years, the proportion increased from 26% to 29%. And from this viewpoint, we can expect that in the future, on management positions, there will be more and more women. In terms of young farmers and their role, you can see the age structure of the EU farmers. Less than 35 years represent a very small column. What's important is that it is extremely difficult to bring young people into agriculture because for them it's not a classical business, for them it's not a good source of income, but you have to consider that this is a lifestyle, especially working with farm animals. You need to work 365 days in a year, night and day. And that's why agriculture becomes less and less attractive for younger people. However, there is an increase of new attractive technologies which make agriculture more and more attractive for younger people. It's in the area of substitution of the agriculture by capital, because the perception of agriculture as a hard toil is changing in favor of more attractive jobs for younger people. What's crucial is that we need to bring people with experience, people with agricultural education. And this, at the level of the EU, is a big problem. Because if you look at that, both in population up to 30 and population above 50, the core of employees are people with just basic education or people just with a practical experience. The full-fledged agrarian education is in those who are 35 years old, only 20%, and those over 50, the figure is only 5%. However, young people coming to the sector are experienced, are educated, and they could cause the shift into yet another dimension from 3.0 to agricultural 4.0. But what needs emphasizing is that the proportion of people in agriculture has a tendency of massive reduction. The question is, what shall we do in the future, because we'll be missing people for seasonal jobs? We are discussing the role of migrants who might do that manual, unqualified jobs. We know that some segments are really depending on migrants. So my time is nearly out. My presentation was a bit longer, but I wanted to show you one phenomenon which is important, and it's related to a labor force, showing disparity in wages and salaries in agriculture, which makes agriculture less attractive for younger people. What you can see is that if you look at wages and salaries, on average, there is a huge gap. We're able to compensate the gap thanks to the CAP, which is bringing new resources into the agriculture. It means that the scissors between the average wages in the national economy and agriculture are not opening up that dynamically. Nevertheless, from the average of the EU, the gap is there, and unless we eliminate this gap, young people will be not willing to come into the agricultural sector. So, this is the end of my presentation because my time's up. Let me thank you for the attention and possible questions and the economic interpretation of some coefficients I presented. You'll find in my presentation, which will be available, so we'll be able to compare differences between individual countries of the EU from the viewpoint of labor productivity. Thank you for the attention.